everyone, and welcome to episode 46 of What to Think, VentureBeat's weekly technology podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Tweeney, the editor of VentureBeat.
And I'm Jordan Ovett, a staff writer.
This week, we're going to be talking to Elissa Shevinsky, the CEO and co-founder at JeKuDo Privacy Company, the former CEO of Glimpse Labs, and the editor of the upcoming feminist anthology called Lean Out. But first, let's talk about some tech news highlights. Here are three stories from VentureBeat that we're particularly keen to talk about this week. I'm just going to start with one that I wrote over the weekend, why I changed my mind about the new MacBook.
Yes, just go on and tell us.
I think I touched a nerve when I first saw the new MacBook as it was announced a week ago at the Apple Watch-centric event. I was like, that is really cool.
Was it the gold one that you saw?
Oh, yeah, I want gold.
Okay.
Because gold is classy, Jordan.
Yeah.
It comes in gold, silver, or space gray, but it's really light, about 2 pounds, really high-resolution Retina display, which is fantastic. New keyboard, that's nice. And they promise a battery life of 9 to 12 hours. So I was like, that sounds fantastic. But then I started to look closer at the specs. There were two big shortcomings. One is it has a mobile processor inside. It's an Intel Core M. This is not an i7 or even an i5. This is a processor that Intel really designed for tablets. So it's going to be slower. It's not going to be as high performance as even a MacBook Air.
Is that how it's going to get that awesome battery life, by the way?
Yes, that's absolutely how it is. Now, I have a little asterisk on that, but I'll come back to that in a minute. The other shortcoming is that there's just one port. When I say one port, I mean one port. There's a USB-C port, and USB-C is very cool. There are a lot of reasons to like it. But on the new MacBook, that is used for all your peripherals. It's also your display connector, and it's also your power connector that you use to power up the MacBook when you're at the end of those 9 to 12 hours of battery life. That is asking too much. I really need more than one port. So I was like, forget it. I'm not buying this version. But I had a lot of commenters who pointed out that, you know what, the very first MacBook Air had exactly the same thing, a single port.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Single USB port. It was mocked for many things. The first MacBook Air, of course, had a separate power connector. Plus a USB port, whereas the new MacBook doesn't even have that. The MacBook Air that I'm using now has 2 USB ports. Apple fixed that problem. They added an SD card reader on the right. It's got a bunch of stuff, right? And its performance is way better than the first generation underpowered MacBook Air.
Yep.
So I'm a fan of the MacBook Air now. I may be a fan of the Retina MacBook in the future, but not in this model.
And John Gruber, the Mac influencer, if I can call him that, he picked up on that. What did he say again?
He basically said this guy Tweeney is mostly right up to a point. Apple will address these glaring flaws, drop the price, and probably mop up the competition.
And do you think he's right?
I wrote that, and he agreed with me. So, of course, I think he's right.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Where he disagreed with me is I was like, if it's going to be like a tablet with a keyboard, you might as well put a touchscreen on it and maybe make that keyboard detachable. But then what you would have is the Microsoft Surface, wouldn't you?
Right.
The asterisk that I feel like I need to add is that Lenovo's Yoga 3 Pro actually has the same processor as the upcoming MacBook.
Wow.
This Core M. It did quite well in some benchmarking tests that I read from AnandTech. So it's possible that the MacBook may be less of a performance dog than I thought it was going to be.
Maybe I'm going to have to get the new MacBook too.
Maybe not in this version, though.
Okay.
But if I get gold, you're getting silver, Jordan.
All right. I'll do it.
Let's talk about Pinterest. You had some news on Pinterest this week.
Everyone knows that Pinterest is slow in getting ready to be a big publicly traded company because it's been slow to monetize.
It's not making any money, in other words.
It's making very little amount of revenue, and probably in terms of profitability, zilch.
Yeah.
So what happens every once in a while, every less than a year, it feels like, Pinterest is going back to the investors and saying, give us more. Just like Uber, just like Dropbox, Box for a while. Now that they're public, it's not going to happen. So this is the latest thing that happened. They actually disclosed $360 million that they had raised already out of a round that could be as big as $577.9 million.
That's a lot of dollars.
Yeah, not $1 billion round, but still pretty hefty. And now they've raised more than $1 billion in venture capital so far. We don't know who the new investors are, but I heard from Pinterest specifically that there were new investors. So we'll be probably finding out soon. They'll probably have a blog post of some kind.
Plus existing investors, Andreessen Horowitz and Bessemer.
Without doubt.
Yeah. The valuation is the eye-popping figure for me.
11 billion, right? More than 10. So it's more significant now.
Less than an Airbnb or Uber, but maybe more than Snapchat?
I think Snapchat might be higher now.
Okay. It's really hard to keep track of these zero revenue companies that are worth tens of billions of dollars. I mean, honestly, it's getting a little ridiculous. But I think in Pinterest's case, it may be a little less ridiculous, at least to me. Because Pinterest at core is a curated list of things that people have put together.
Boards.
Many of which are products.
Sometimes not.
Yeah, so
I was looking at Negronis last night. I mean, that is a product that you can make with some Campari and vermouth and what's the third ingredient?
I don't know, but there's a Pinterest board for Negronis.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, okay.
So some products. A lot of images.
Are these just different pictures of Negronis or are they different recipes?
Different recipes and general beautiful pictures of different glasses.
That is way more obsession about a single drink than I can really contemplate.
You really get into it. I was looking for a good picture of a Negroni, so don't worry about why, but
okay, that's fine. I'm sure that Pinterest could monetize that by selling an ad to Campari, or not even an ad, selling a targeted offer and then collecting a referral fee when you buy.
When I walk into the liquor store.
Yeah. Or when you buy that bottle and have it delivered via Amazon drone or something.
Right.
I think there's enormous revenue potential, but so far we haven't seen any of it.
It's going to happen. I don't know when they're going to go public. That's an interesting one because they're so slow to monetize.
With the current public market climate, you really need to show some revenue before you can go public. This is not 1998. Let's move on and very quickly talk about a partnership between Twitter and IBM.
Yeah.
Now, this is interesting. IBM has a new cloud-based service for analyzing Twitter, or it's a host of services. And they promise to combine IBM's ability to manage large amounts of data and unstructured data, munge together the Twitter fire hose with other kinds of data like weather reports and market research and your company's, product lineup and sales data, and come up with insights.
And let me just ask you, is Watson involved here?
They didn't mention Watson specifically, but I would be surprised if it were not involved in some way as an option that you could purchase
Watson
as part
will
of the
be
package.
Showing up at some point in the next 3 months. I would imagine that.
They had some examples of insights that they had discovered from some of their pilot deployments with actual customers, which tend to be very, very big companies. So there were some retail and some fashion insights, but the one that sort of I thought was funny was they were working with cable companies and wireless carriers, telcos, and discovered that if the weather is bad and somebody is tweeting angrily with angry emotions, there's a very good chance they're about to cancel their carrier or their cable service.
It's a takeaway. That's an insight. Do you think a lot of companies are going to buy this?
IBM is sort of legitimizing, in a way, for a certain kind of very large conservative company, the Fortune 500.
Fortune 100, Fortune 50.
Exactly. The kind of company that has already been spending millions of dollars a year on enterprise solutions, many of them provided by IBM software, but also consulting services. This gives IBM something to add to that mix, and the corporations, it kind of gives an IBM like, it's okay to analyze Twitter. It's not just bullshit anymore.
Right. I mean, the line I was thinking of when you were telling me about this is, you don't get fired for buying IBM. This is certainly true instead of buying social stuff from Adobe, Oracle.
That's right.
Other companies.
That's what they used to say in the 1960s. And who knows, maybe they'll say that now.
They still say that.
Do they really
hear it? Yeah.
They say that.
Yeah,
any place outside of Armonk, New York, do they say that?
San Francisco.
I mean, you can certainly see in a certain kind of company, if your line item is like payment to IBM, that's going to fly a lot better than payment to Hootsuite.
Yeah.
Hootsuite is going to be like, what? What kind of goofiness is this?
Exactly. They're not public yet, though.
Yeah, no offense to Hootsuite, by the way. They make a great product, but it is a goofy name. For all this and more tech news, just go to VentureBeat.com. You'll find plenty of opinions and news and analysis from me and Jordan and all of the VentureBeat team. Before we go to our guest, I want to take a minute to thank our host and sponsor, New Relic. New Relic helps customers make sense of billions of data points about millions of applications in real time. More than 250,000 users leverage New Relic's comprehensive cloud-based solution to analyze more than 690 billion data points per day. When your brand and customer experience depend on the performance of modern software, New Relic provides powerful insight into that software, whether it's on the web or in native mobile apps or more. And you can learn more at newrelic.com. Now let's welcome our guest, Alyssa Shevinsky. She is the CEO and co-founder at JeKuDo, a privacy company in the Mach 37 cybersecurity accelerator in Northern Virginia. She's also the editor of an upcoming feminist anthology called Lean Out, which will be published perhaps as early as this summer, and she was formerly the CTO and co-founder of Glimpse Labs. So Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm just going to get this right out on the table. Like, you have transitioned from Glimpse to JeKuDo. Can you tell me what happened with Glimpse? What's going on?
So we've shut down Glimpse. Pax stepped down.
This is your co-founder, Pax Dickinson, who...
Yes, the notorious Pax Dickinson.
Okay.
He was always very respectful to me personally. And we worked together very well, but we really couldn't get past his reputation. And he stepped down, and that was a significant reason why.
I want to back up a little bit because there's a little backstory, right?
Oh, there's a lot of backstory.
Ton of backstory, right? So Pax got in trouble because he was the CTO at Business Insider, I think, and he got fired for this string of obnoxious, sexist, racist tweets that, you know, I think he was making jokes, but they were obviously in really poor taste. Got him in trouble, got fired from Business Insider. He became kind of this big social media pariah. Then he pops up like sometime after that incident, and we actually wrote a story on VentureBeat in late 2013 about how you and Pax were actually working together. So what I want to say is, like, it sounded so promising, like sort of this wonderful second chapter for Pax, and like you had found a way to work with this guy who had a terrible reputation, but you couldn't get past that somehow publicly, or what happened?
And not with a cool concept like focusing on teenagers?
The concept actually was super cool, but if you're going to put in the time and the energy and the work and the dedication that it takes to build a company, you need to just be so in love with the mission. And as much as I intellectually and emotionally believe in privacy for teenagers, which is where we had ended up with Glimpse, I really just want to be making security tools, like real security tools for grown-ups and for grown-up use cases. And that's one of the reasons why I started a new company. Glimpse had gotten off mission because we had so much traction, and that can be a very attractive thing. But with JeKuDo, I'm making this bet on myself and my team that we know how to create that traction, and we know how to build things that people want, and that we can do it for this mission and this use case that we just care about so much in a way that was never quite as close to home when we were making things for teenagers.
Is it hard to make an app that teenagers love for a long time? Is it that their attention span is shorter, or what is it?
I've always thought about the teen market as this awesome set of early adopters. And that came out of watching other apps that had teens, and the teens would create all this traction and then leave.
Like Twitter, or?
I'm thinking specifically of Like a Little, which is a company from a few years back. It was a dating app, and it had a ton of teen traction. And then the founder pivoted to build something community-oriented. I haven't read a lot about it, but it does seem to be going well. And I looked at that, and I realized that teens are this fantastic early adopter set. They're so social. They create so much virality. They're influencers for early adoption. But long term, you ultimately need some other demographic who you're going to monetize and you're going to have a certain kind of loyalty. And you see Snapchat starting to do that now, where they're getting brands on board,
right,
and they're really mainstreaming. That actually opens up a big opportunity for someone who would want to come in and build a teen app. So that space is there in the market, and I still believe that that's a good business opportunity, and I certainly believe that teenagers deserve privacy. But I'm so much more excited to be focusing on security, as in encryption and real server deletion, and thinking about like how enterprises can secure their information. You know, people think that enterprise isn't sexy, and I think it's just the sexiest thing in the world. So it's really where I should be working. And I'm here at Mach 37 doing that.
I am totally with you. I write about enterprise software every day. Either that or enterprise storage, servers, or networking gear. So I am with you.
We will be best friends.
Yeah, but I'm actually surprised because I thought this was something that really had some momentum. And
Glimpse, you mean?
I was surprised, honestly, to hear you say that it's closing. What? I don't understand. You just thought they were moving on, or?
I have to be honest, all of my companies have had momentum. I am actually pretty good at finding a community that has a need and then meeting it. The company I had before Glimpse was working on spam filtering for women on OkCupid, and people loved that idea. And then we moved on to make Glimpse because Glimpse seemed like a bigger opportunity and way more meaningful. Pax and I were just so struck by this notion of making easy-to-use privacy. With Glimpse, we'd gotten a bit off track. We were seduced by the appeal of that fast and easy traction and starting to serve this market. But I just firmly believe that I can do that in this space that is the mission I've always cared about. And when I spoke to some of my advisors, Kelly Hoey's a good example. She was the independent board member and one of my earliest investors at Glimpse. She said, I'm really glad to see you doing this. This feels really authentic. This is the mission that you'd cared about. And it's also what makes us different.
What exactly makes you different?
The fact that we figured out how to do encryption in a way that's faster and easier to use. You know, the fact that I have credibility in the security community, which is really hard to get.
That's
Yeah, there's this moat around everything I'm doing where it would be really hard for someone else to come in and compete with me doing what I do. Whereas with the teenage space, someone else could easily come in and beat us at our own game in that case.
So let's put security aside for a minute, because one of the things we wanted to talk to you about was culture and women in tech. And like, it's been on a lot of people's minds lately because of the Ellen Pao case. You know, I wanted to bring you in because, first of all, you have some experience with sort of quote unquote programmer culture and how to deal with that. But second of all, like, you're writing a book. So first of all, it's called Lean Out, which I think is kind of funny.
Yes, I love that.
So why did you choose that title?
Because it really speaks to what this book is about. It's an anthology to start. And one of the criticisms of Lean In is that it's really by Sheryl Sandberg for people who can relate to her.
Oh, yeah, like hiring nannies and having special nurseries built in their offices and things like that. Right.
By the way, I want a butler, and I'm hiring for a butler, and I have some applications pending. I will insist on calling you Jeeves, so if you're not okay with me calling you Jeeves, you can't be my butler. So, you know, Sheryl Sandberg speaks to me. I am an overeducated, arguably privileged white woman in tech who leaning in is an option for me.
Yeah.
It happens to be that it didn't work out so well. But I don't think we can criticize Sandberg too heavily for speaking to her own experience. That's all you can do.
Right.
But what's so cool about Lean Out is we're bringing in so many people's perspectives, and that's needed. You know, it's been years since Lean In was published, and it's become like this iconic women in tech text, and it's time that the rest of us had stories and role models that we can relate to.
Can you give us a preview of some of the contributors who will be in this?
Dom, who is a developer at Twilio, is working on a piece about surviving programmer culture. And I just read it this morning. It's one of our final submissions, and it is so good. It's based on her recent talk at the Lesbians Who Tech event, and it speaks to all the stages of grief and denial when you find yourself in a company dominated by programmer culture.
Yeah.
And it also speaks to how you navigate that. The anthology is a combination of stories of the experiences people have had and stories that are designed to be inspiring and show you how you can navigate around the patriarchy. I think it relates to the Ellen Pao case, which I really wanted to speak to because it's so timely.
Yes.
I took a look at Kleiner Perkins, and Eileen Lee was at Kleiner Perkins. And it seems, discovered that it wasn't the best place for an ambitious, brilliant woman. And Eileen Lee went and she founded her own VC firm.
Yeah, Cowboy Ventures. Mm-hmm. She's fantastic, by the way. I don't know anything about the background of why she left Kleiner, but she's a fantastic VC and very smart, very ambitious investor.
Yeah, I actually don't have any inside information on why she left. All I know is she was there and now she's not. Or at least she founded her own firm, and her relationship to Kleiner is much more minimal than when she was there before. I did meet with her once at the Kleiner Perkins office, so she does have some relationship that's ongoing. And I think Eileen Lee is a great example of leaning out, where she founded her own company and she's doing her own thing. And I see her as a tremendous role model. Mm-hmm. As opposed to Ellen Pao, where I look at that situation and I really just think everyone is wrong. Now, Lean Out is an anthology, and a lot of different perspectives and voices are affected there. But I think that for many of us, until things improve, the best thing to do is just go around these bad environments.
As opposed to, what Ellen Pao is doing in filing a big public lawsuit and making a big deal about it. You think it would have been more productive for her to just kind of quietly leave and start a new firm, or what?
Well, sexism isn't evenly distributed in Silicon Valley. And on an individual basis, when I'm thinking of the young women and women in transition and anyone who doesn't fit into the programmer mold, when they find a situation that isn't good for them, or when they start looking at where they want to be in tech, my advice is to do your research and find places that are going to be warm and welcoming and wonderful. And part of what I love about Dawn's story is she had bad experiences and she's at Twilio now and says that Twilio is great. And I look at my own story and I've had so many just like wild experiences, like too wild for me to describe, in this podcast. What I said at the Lesbians Who Tag event was that, I saw a lot of dicks I didn't intend to see. So I had a lot of these wild and crazy and mixed up experiences and managed to get to this place now where things are kind of idyllic. I'm at this accelerator now that is extremely professional and respectful, and they're funding me, and I usually get to work from home where I create my own culture because it's my house, where I run my own company, and I'm writing this book, and I'm excited that there are enough places where things are good that we can identify where things are bad and just not go there.
I think that's fantastic advice if you're an entrepreneur or a developer, because there are a lot of accelerators and incubators. There are many choices, right? So if one is too gross or frat boyish or programmery, you can hopefully find something else, right? But if you want to be a VC, like Ellen Pao did, I think Fortune looked at the numbers of VC funds that had raised $200 million or more and found that only 23 of the 542 partners were female. So that's like 4.2%. There's actually a higher proportion of female CEOs in the Fortune 500 than there are partners at major VC funds. So there's almost no place she can go, right?
Yeah, and when I was applying for business school, I was dating this Wall Street guy, and we were planning out my career. I said I wanted to be a VC. And I was doing research and reading, and I thought, well, I have the skill set to eventually get there. And he said, you can't be a VC. Well, why not? Well, because you're a woman.
Ouch.
I don't understand why that means I can't do this. And he said, just look at the people who are VCs. And this was maybe 10 years ago. And he said, you're not going to see any women, and certainly not any women who are partners. And I did that research, and I was certainly discouraged. And I've obviously chosen a different path. So things are getting better, but it's pretty bad. And Kleiner Perkins certainly doesn't look good in this case.
Well, you've ended up being CEO at a number of roles. And I just wonder, as you've set out to raise capital, and it sounds like as you've done that with your latest thing, how have you figured out where to go, which VCs to talk to, which firms to approach?
I've been doing research on that pretty much since I started fundraising, and some firms are better than others. My experience pretty consistently is that the top people tend to be fairly professional, and also that things get better as you become too good to be ignored. I have very good experiences in general now because I can walk away from a situation that's not great, and because people are respectful to me on account of the work that I've done and that I'm doing. Right now, I'm more concerned that VCs are genuine about security and privacy, and that they understand what that means for how you drive revenue, and that they can bring some value there. That's actually my foremost concern as I think about VCs now. So I'm looking at the firms that have a great track record or that have funded other friends in the industry, where it does a lot to talk to your friends and see that they're happy and they can recommend VCs. It's important that we're respected by the people we work with.
You had some advice earlier on, which is essentially route around the problems. Like if you're encountering static, there are choices. You can find places to work or incubators or accelerators that are more amenable. Do you have advice for women who find themselves, in a situation where they are forced, or maybe choose to work with somebody because they're so talented, who is sort of a programmer? How do you negotiate those kinds of situations?
That's really difficult. If you're making that choice, then you must be getting a lot out of it, but it's not what I would advocate. Even when I was working with Pax, he was respectful with me, and we had so many shared values around easy-to-use privacy at a time when that was a rare thing. And that was one of the reasons why we worked together so well, was because we both believed in the same thing. And we had a mutual respect for the work that we were doing together. I can't imagine working with someone who isn't going to be respectful. That seems incredibly unproductive. And if anyone chooses to do so, I have no advice on how to do that well.
Just to be super clear about you and Pax, is there something that ultimately came out or became obvious that made you say you guys had to go in different directions?
Pax did this Gamergate startup a few months ago, and we were definitely on different sides of the issue. I'm publishing a number of anti-Gamergate activists, but there were a number of reasons why he decided to step down, and then there were a number of reasons why I decided to start up a new company. It's a complicated thing, and I'm honestly really excited to move ahead with JeKuDo without the drama and the baggage that we had with Glimpse, although Glimpse remains one of the highlights of my career. I loved building that company and all the people who were part of it and believed in the same mission. That was an extremely powerful thing. And what's so cool now is moving ahead and bringing only the best of that. And I'm really, really happy to finally be in this place where I just have a company that works and doesn't have any drama or any problems. And this is the thing that I was trying to get to for so long. It gives me a lot of optimism to know that it's possible to work hard and finally get where you're trying to go.
That's fantastic, Alyssa. It sounds like you've arrived in a really good place. We're almost out of time, but I have one more question, and I want to ask it because you've given us some good advice. You may not be able to tell because you're joining us by phone, but Jordan and I are both guys.
I suspected.
So what advice do you have for men who want to work in the technology industry, kind of knowing that there's this sort of cultural tension right now between men and women?
Yeah, I'd say just go for it and be professional and be nice and be thoughtful and have fun. Most of the issues that I see come from people who are either intentionally or unintentionally being thoughtless. I think about a guy who I overheard at the Developer Week conference, and he was talking about the foul language that he uses when he speaks, regardless of who's in the audience. And he said that he knows that the audience members are uncomfortable, but that he's just got to be himself, that he's got to be in the moment, and that he's just not able or willing to constrain that. I think that really speaks to the cultural issues that it comes from a kind of willful thoughtlessness. Men and women can work together really nicely if we all try. We just have to be a little bit more thoughtful and respectful of each other, it sounds like. Cool. That is all the time we have. Alyssa, we're really looking forward to your book, Lean Out, which will be out, this summer? The estimated ship date is as soon as June. Okay. The way the publishing industry works is the official pub date is September, but the books will be out far sooner. And I will make sure that you have one. We will look forward to reading a copy, and listeners, check out the book, Lean Out, edited by Alyssa Shevinsky. We will look forward to hearing more about your startup, JeKuDo, when you are ready to say more about it. So, Alyssa, thank you very much for joining us for our podcast. Thank you so much for having me on. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for What to Think, VentureBeat's technology news podcast. We are here every week on iTunes, on Stitcher, and on VentureBeat's SoundCloud. Yes, on SoundCloud and on VentureBeat's website. If you haven't subscribed to us in iTunes or Stitcher or your podcast listener of choice yet, please do so. Just search for What to Think. And I will be back next week. Till then, I'm Dylan Tweeney. And I'm Jordan Ovett. Catch you next time. Bye.